get in?
Anybody else want to speak to the council tonight?
So then you had to go back upstairs and come back around?
Just in case. Just in case. Yeah.
Where's Jim at? Jim and is Jim here? Okay. Maybe is he locked out? Can Tim get Jim out of the restroom?
Kathy's taking over my spot.
So God, we call it.
Okay, so it just comes up here not known, and we work it out. Well, I mean, we'll know, but no.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Midwest City City Council meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. The first thing we have this evening is the invocation by Pastor Bob Rutherford, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilman Moore. Would you please stand with us?
And before I say the prayer, I was just told over here by the Chief of Police 24 years ago today, I married he and his wife. So congratulations to them. All right, please join me in prayer. Father, we just thank you for each blessing that you give to us. I pray we never take any day of life for granted. And Lord, we know when we think about our nation, we think about the world, there are great challenges. At the present time, there are many blessings, but there are tremendous challenges. And Father, we do pray for our nation. We pray for our state. I pray for our city and all the things that they seek to accomplish here that are good and beneficial to citizens. We just pray that, Lord, you'll guide them and those things will work out. I pray for all the people who are represented here tonight, not just on the council, but all the citizens. And we pray this will be a good meeting this evening. And Lord Jesus, most of all, I just pray for every person in this room that we can understand the most important thing in life is making sure we know you as our Savior. And so I pray for all people that they could know you. Lord Jesus, we ask this in your name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Community-related announcements.
Okay, I've just got two. We did receive our sales tax check for the month of February. We continue to see a trend being less than what we had last year. Sales tax was actually down $107,000, whereas use tax was up $64,000. So for the month, we were a negative $44,000. Against our projection, we're on sales tax. We still trail our projection by $324,000, and on sales tax compared to last year, we're down about $515,000. So we continue to monitor that, and hopefully we'll get some new retail coming into the community that will help offset some of those losses. Also wanted to mention that on February 26th at 6 p.m. down at the Charles J. Johnson building, we'll have the presentation of our ADA transition plan to the public, and that will be followed by subsequent presentation to the council for adoption.
Any other announcements? Next thing is a real great pleasure for me. I'd like for Mr. Janacek and Daryl Sanders to meet me down front, please. For those of you that don't know Darrell, this is Darrell Sanders. Darrell is a really long-time employee of the city of Midwest City. And the first part of this I'm going to read, and then I'm going to turn it over to Bill. The subject is discussion and consideration of presenting Darrell Sanders with a plaque in recognition for loyal and dedicated service to the citizens of Midwest City for the past 33 years. And then Bill wrote this really nice memo. And Bill, if you'd finish reading that memo, then there's a letter associated with that I want to read after that.
Okay, Darrell Sanders transferred to the Sanitation Department on September 1st, 1994 from Community Development. Darrell has proven to be a very valuable employee to the Public Works Sanitation Department with his stay busy attitude, which is reflected in his excellent job performance for the last 21 years and 4 months of service in the Sanitation Department. Darrell has proven his skills with excellent customer service, noted especially on Saturdays with the City of Midwest City citizens. Darrell has received positive feedback time and time again from the Midwest City citizens on how kind and helpful he is on Saturdays at the refuge station. I would like to read, or the mayor will read a letter that it was in his file. There were several letters of commendation to him, and I chose this one if the mayor wanted to read it. This last year, another noteworthy accomplishment, Darrell was voted by the entire city workforce, his peers, and awarded the Midwest City 2014 Employee of the Year, which was presented to him this past year's Midwest City Christmas party. Darrell was, of course, very humble in accepting the award and very thankful for just being nominated. Darrell has been known for his weather advice per his weather rock, and for the most part has been proven right about the weather more than our local weather stations. The past 33 years, you have done a super job for the city of Midwest City. Thanks for everything. Hope you'll enjoy every minute of your retirement. We'll miss you, but you'll never be forgotten.
This is just one of many letters, as Bill indicated, that were in Darrell's 201 file. And I'll just read the body of this thing. This really kind of says it all. This letter is an appreciation and commendation for one of your employees at the City Refuge Center. My husband and I often take on Saturday and truly appreciate one of your employees whose name on his shirt says Darrell. So we think that probably was Darrell and not someone imposing as him. He's been at the center for a long time, as I can remember, and is always courteous and efficient in taking down the information required and directing each resident to the right area. Today it was very hot, and still the line was very long. With the cost of gasoline, everyone had to keep their engines off, and we sat in the heat waiting. Darrell sped things up by walking the way down the line, gathering everyone's information. More importantly, he was in the sun and most likely feeling the heat much more than any of us. However, he had a smile on his face and kind words for the people in each vehicle. He was just so pleasant that no one was ill, no one in it was ill or having to wait. During these times, we hear so much negative talk about city, state, and federal employees. It's refreshing to know that in Midwest City, Oklahoma, we have a treasure, Darrell at the Refuge Center. A really fine example of an excellent city employee. I don't know what he gets paid, but he definitely deserves a raise. And that's from Rita Deandra. And she was a neighbor of mine when Karen and I lived over on Haven Circle. And so I know this individual, and you really made an impression upon this city resident, Darrell, with the fine job that you did that day, as you do every day at the Refuge Center. And lastly, Darrell, we have a plaque. It says, in special recognition and thanks to Darrell Sanders for loyal and dedicated service to the citizens of the city of Midwest City, Oklahoma, August 1st, 1981 to January the 28th, 2015. Congratulations, Darrell.
Thank you very much. Here, Darryl. Thank you, Bill. The next item on the agenda is a consent agenda. These items are placed on the consent agenda so that members of the city council, by unanimous consent, can approve routine agenda items by one motion. If any item proposed on the consent agenda does not meet with the approval of all council members, or members of the audience wish to discuss the proposed item with the council, that item will be removed and heard in regular order.
Move to approve the consent agenda. Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item D1, public hearing with discussion consideration of adopting a resolution declaring all structures located at 1620 McGregor Drive a public nuisance as defined in subsection 27-318 of the Municipal Code, and setting dates to demolish and remove the structures from the site.
Is there anyone here wishing to speak on this item?
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item D2.
Public hearing with discussion consideration of adopting a resolution declaring all structures located at 9416 Northeast 28th Street a public nuisance as defined in subsection 27-318 of the Municipal Code, and setting dates to demolish and remove the structures from the site. This item was continued at the December 9th, 2014 council meeting. Staff visited the site earlier this week, found that the majority of the work that was required has been done by the property owners, and so we would request that no action be taken on this item.
Okay, moving right along.
Item D3, CA 72, public hearing with discussion consideration of an appeal to section 9-385X of the Municipal Code regarding permanent off-premise advertising signs being allowed only in industrial zoning for the property located at 2905 Har Drive. This item was also tabled at the December 9th, 2014 meeting. I believe there are some representatives in the audience here to speak to the council regarding this item.
Mr. Whistler? Could you state your name and your address for the record, please?
Good evening. My name is Sean Whistler. I'm with Whistler Media Group, and our address is 11063D South Memorial, Tulsa, Oklahoma. My company, we're a family-owned 19-year-old billboard company, or also known as At-A-Home Media, and we do business primarily in the Oklahoma City and Tulsa metro areas, including all of the suburbs in those two metro areas. And so essentially what my company does is we help businesses grow sales. We serve about 85% of our clientele are small business owners, retailers, restaurant owners, and so forth. And so our industry basically helps capture, Midwest City is neatly positioned along Interstate 40 that stretches across our country and brings interstate traffic through our community. And so in the out-of-home media business, essentially the way we serve our clients is help direct that traffic to drive retail sales and economic growth, and ultimately, hopefully, tax base in the communities that we serve. And so I've got a handout that I was going to see if we could pass through to all of the.
Thanks, sir.
So at this location, there is a group of, I believe, 4 longtime residents of Midwest City that own this property, and they have a billboard that they estimated that's been there now for approximately 40 years. And so whenever the city of Midwest City changed their ordinance, essentially what happened is that longtime billboard was grandfathered in, and under, presumably the intent of beautification, the ordinance changed disallowing new billboards in that zoning corridor. And so what happens, I think, whenever, we call that a moratorium in my industry, where they disallow new billboards, under the intent of beautification, we're putting a cap as a city on the total quantity of billboards in our community. And I think, maybe the unintended consequence when that happens then is that we're also locking in these grandfathered structures that are sometimes 40 or 50 years old, and we're saying, under the intent of beautification, we're going to cap any new ones, but we're going to be stuck looking at the grandfathered structures for a lifetime. And so, under my proposal for a variance, essentially we're not asking to change the impact on the quantity of billboards in your community. What we're requesting is a variance to rebuild an existing structure that, one, would be a single pole structure instead of a multi-pole structure. Two, from a safety aspect, it would be engineered. And then three, I started this company 19 years ago, and the first 3 years, in 1995 through early 98, my industry, all the signs were still hand-painted. And we would project the creative from a proof, a piece of paper that a client approved, onto, we'd use a projector, and we projected on sign panels, in the warehouse in a jig, and then the crane and crew would go out and change out those sign faces for our clients. In latter years, I guess in 2008, our first community that we upgraded to the LED digital technology was Tulsa, Oklahoma. And from 2007 to 2008, I worked with that city council on their ordinance to contemplate that technology. During about the same period of time, the Oklahoma Department of Transportation, which is governed by the Federal Department of Transportation, they have a federal-state agreement they enter into, and the, short for Oklahoma Department of Transportation, ODOT, took their position based off of the federal traffic safety studies. They took their position under the guidance of the federal DOT on their position on this new LED digital technology. And as you drive through Oklahoma City, I'm sure everybody here is familiar with the technology. From my perspective, I help improve the lives of the small business owners I serve by helping drive customers, drive sales, and for your community, I think that helps drive tax base and economic development. And so, years ago, the first year I was in business, I remember I was an OSU graduate, and I was an entrepreneur out of survival. I was the guy that had a short childhood because he was working like he was 50 when he was 9 and 10 years old. And after graduating with my 2 bachelor's degrees from Oklahoma State University, one in civil engineering with the plan of being a developer and the other in marketing, I had written a thesis on mass media. And that's how we endeavored in. My job offers were with publicly traded builders out of state, and I just really like the idea of having a meaningful purpose of helping businesses grow revenue. And so that's really the premise in which I started my company and the way I serve the people that entrust my company to help them generate new customers and grow sales. From my perspective, and under the same premise, we've been successful in other municipalities with this variance. Sometimes the concern is, if we pass a variance, are we going to be setting a precedent that we're uncomfortable with? And so I'll back up to, presumably the intent when your ordinance changed and you grandfathered the existing billboards in, and your zoning code no longer allowed new billboards in those zoning corridors, what happened was the unanticipated consequence of we're capping any new, but we're stuck with these grandfathered sign structures. So from my perspective, I think there's kind of three benefits to this, and one is, under the premise of beautification, or in the spirit of what presumably was the original intent, if you approve this variance, you're saying we're not allowing more billboards into our community. We're simply acknowledging that when we grandfathered these structures, there could have been an unintended consequence of we're stuck with a 40 or 50-year-old sign that we're going to look at to the end of time because somebody owns that property and it was grandfathered per a previous zoning code. And then secondly, when you think about economic development in the community. Right now, we've been in a nice recovery in our economy. A couple of things that bother me as an Oklahoman, many clients and many friends and people I go to church with work for these large oil companies who are all verbalizing they're gearing up to start downsizing because production costs are higher than the price per barrel for oil. And I remember back, my company was one of those small businesses that fought to survive in the economic downturn. We dug our heels in, and you're looking at a founder and a self-made guy that every customer we ever generated, I cultivated, and we started from ground zero with an idea 19 years ago. But when that economy turns down, I think one of the nice things of your community is you're neatly positioned along Interstate 40, and there's through state traffic, and we have this ability to capture that traffic and drive it for retail and restaurant sales to stimulate our economy, which also drives tax base for your community. And if we're not optimizing or utilizing that opportunity, are we passing on that opportunity to our neighbors when it could be our small businesses that we're stimulating, our retail sales that we're growing, and our tax base that we're growing? I think the third tier of what I always try to look at, and I think I'm a father of soon to be 7, and so yes, usually people say, how that happens, or you crazy or whatever, but I try to be, in my family, we try to pass on the values of we're here to serve our neighbor. And so, as a media company owner, I think one of the great benefits that when you look at being able to give back that we're able to offer is serving our community. And so when you get into situations in Oklahoma with severe weather or Amber Alert needs, or just our community has events and they need a way to notify the public, we also always, as just kind of a condition of the way we do business, is we offer to that community the free public service announcements utilizing that digital network. So an LED digital billboard is essentially, it's internally lit, and instead of sending a crane and a crew out to install it, now there's a wireless modem, and there's essentially a computer on board. And so we're able to change content in real time. We're also able to serve more than one business. Before, we would print that ad on a printer the size of a warehouse and send a crane and crew out to install it, and they basically wrap it around that sign face. Well, now today, if we have multiple retailers, restaurants, small businesses in the community, we can loop between advertisers for the benefit of all of those, and leveraging that interstate through traffic that we reach every day on I-40 to pull some of those dollars off into our community. And so, but I think, at the end of the day then, if you say, well, if we approve this variance, are we setting a precedent? I think you are, but I think you're setting a precedent that's consistent with the spirit of beautification. You got a multi-poled, grandfathered sign structure there, and we're going to put a nice engineered single-pole structure. You've got grandfathered sign face technology, and we can bring the LED digital technology that can not only serve more than one of our business owners in the community, we can also provide free public service announcements for our community. And I think there's the economic development aspect of that. So I'm grateful for the opportunity for your consideration today, and appreciate your time.
Questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We're going to want to get a briefing from Mr. Harless. Sid, do you want to get a briefing?
If you have some questions, otherwise.
Does council have any questions? Do we need clarification from staff? Or?
No, I just have a comment, but I think Jeff had one, so go ahead, Jeff.
The question was about the comprehensive plan, the 2008 comprehensive plan versus the 85 comprehensive plan. And this comprehensive plan speaks more about specific things in it instead of general statements. And one of the things that it does talk about is entryways into the community, the corridors through the community, and what we should do to set ourselves apart from other communities.
Let me do a little follow-up. I know enough about this sometimes to be dangerous, but I believe that under the previous ordinances and comprehensive plan, this would have been considered a non-conforming billboard because it would have been located in a zoning district that would not have been industrial or open display, a C4 or an industrial district. And so it would have been non-conforming for many, many, many years. It would not have just been as a result of the update of the comprehensive plan recently.
Mr. Whistler, we met, and I told you that. No, you can be standing. I'm just telling you. I did a lot of thinking after we talked about it, and in your comments today about economic development. And when you initially told me, I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And now after hearing staff, I think they made a lot of sense. And I just wanted to kind of point out my thought on it for you since we talked about it and you'd asked me. I don't think we're choosing between economic development and not helping the business. I just think the intent of where we're going as a city to help promote and bring businesses doesn't align with this concept of having that sign where it's at. And so I think Billy made a good point about that earlier. I just want to throw that out there. That made a lot of sense to me, and that's kind of the direction that I'm going for on that.
Any other comments or questions? Come right ahead, sir.
My
State your
name is Jim
and
Kelly, and I office at Grand Boulevard in Oklahoma City. I represent the owner of the property, Midwest Business Investment. They consist of 4 citizens of Midwest City that I'm sure most of you know, Bill Bernhardt, Tony Thomas, Stan Acree, and Joe Leone. My client strongly supports this application for a variance. We're having a hard time understanding, I suppose. It benefits, of course, my client. It benefits the sign company. But it benefits the city tax base-wise. It benefits the citizens with the civic announcements. We think it's a far more acceptable and beautiful presentation than what is there today. And we have, it seems like, 5 pluses, and I'm just not quite sure of where is the city headed if they're not headed in the direction of this technology. I have no doubts that there will be an LED sign close by. People will go through Midwest City if they are not captured for the retail business. They'll be captured by Dell City, by Bricktown, by whatever you do going west. And I'm just having a hard time, and I understand your comment, but where are we headed with LED technology? Is there going to be no LED signs? Is there going to be nothing in the future?
I don't think the LED has anything to do with it.
It's not so much the LED. There's actually one right across the street at the Walgreens. So I don't think it's really the LED technology. I think it's it's a non-conforming use, and by the application, it's made even more non-conforming with its size, height, and still in a non-properly zoned area.
Billy, and just so I have my head straight, this property isn't zoned for the sign,
Correct.
So we couldn't rebuild it. If it goes away, it's just gone away, and the intent of the ordinance was to actually prevent this in the future. Is that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So if this was zoned properly, then there wouldn't be a problem if it was zoned industrial.
If this is zoned industrial, then it wouldn't be a problem. They would be coming to you for variances for the height and the size, but not the location.
Pardon me, I guess I was confused because on in the application, the ordinance provided the size square footage of 1,000 feet, and that's what we based our application off, is we thought we were conforming. And in fact, when I originally worked with your assistant, she thought we were compliant to the ordinance, and that she indicated we were going to be able to pick up our permit within a few days. And so we were surprised by when you said 1,000. In the compliant zoning corridors, the square foot size was $1,000, or I'm sorry, 1,000 square feet. So when we made our application, we thought we were inside of what the ordinance allowed for properly zoned corridors.
A height of 20 feet and 200 square feet.
For the current zoning code. Okay.
The current sign ordinance.
Okay, we were looking at based off of the corridors that allowed for billboards allowed for up to 1,000 square feet in your ordinance, so we didn't understand that we weren't compliant. We thought, and the way the ordinance read, it was a little bit, you know, I consider myself a little bit of an expert on ordinance language because I work in I work with a large number of municipalities, but, you know, we felt like there was a little bit of ambiguity because it talked about in the I-40 corridor allowing for billboards, but then in the, you know, then it talked about later there was some language about allowing in the industrial zone. But originally when we applied, one of our team members worked with Kelly, and so we thought, we were compliant, and Kelly had called us back at a later date apologizing, saying she misinterpreted, and that we were going to be denied on the permit. So we really didn't, originally when we went through the engineering and the survey work and so forth, we thought we were completely inside the bounds. I think our perspective was just at the end of that, and I understand what you're saying under the comprehensive code, that zoning doesn't allow for a billboard today, and I think our perspective was just, it doesn't allow for a new one, but you've got one. So if we could work with you guys and figure out what might usually make sense to beautify the one you got, that could be worthy consideration, I guess.
Well, I apologize for any confusion, but I think you're referring to the ODOT 1972 or the federal highway, 1,000 square feet. And our code does mention that, but that's kind of a catch-all, and where ours is more stringent, then that would apply, and ours is.
Okay.
I'd like to add too, I've checked with Oklahoma City, and I know we're in line with, I think, the long-range goal of all the cities, that there's a beauty corridor that they inserted with the city. I don't think you can get a new permit in Oklahoma City until you get out to Shawnee, if I'm not mistaken. It's very difficult.
You are
to get
mistaken.
one.
I just built one by Portland and Meridian on I-40. That is a digital.
Well, it must have been, there must have already been a sign there.
No,
you can't get a new one.
It was a new permit. Yes, sir.
Councilman, I think what the councilman was referring to is the corridor going out east from the downtown out towards Shawnee.
I see. Okay. I understand.
Move to deny, because it's not allowed off-premise advertising signs.
Second. Have a motion and a second to deny the request. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is denied. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your consideration.
Next item is discussion, consideration of approving and passing an ordinance amending Chapter 8, Animals and Fowl by amending Article 1 in general, Section 8-3, Sales and Release of Pets and Small Animals, and Section 8-5, same, Acts Prohibited, by amending Article 4, Dogs, by taking Section 8-89 out of reserve and entitling it Tethering of Dogs, and amending Section 8-88, Failure to Surrender Violating Dogs, Section 8-92, When a Dog Constitutes a Nuisance, Section 8-94, Reclaiming Dogs, Section 8-95, Unreclaimed Dogs, Section 8-97, Vaccinations and Licensing, and Section 8-98, Violations, by amending Article 5, Cats, by taking Section 8-113 out of reserve and entitling it to Tethering of Cats, and amending Section 8-112, Failure to Surrender Violating Cats, Section 8-115, When a cat constitutes a nuisance, Section 8-118, Reclaiming Cats, Section 8-119, Unreclaimed Cats, Section 8-121, Vaccinations and Licensing, and Section 8-124, Violations, by amending Article 6, Vaccination and Registration, by amending Section 8-133, Frequency of Rabies Vaccination, and Section 8-136, License and Registration Fees, Terms, and by amending Article 8, animal welfare shelter operations by amending Section 8-162 fees and by amending Article 9 animals, keeping prohibited, by amending Section 8-171 animals, keeping prohibited, and providing for repealer and severability and establishing an effective date. This item was on further information on January 13th and continued from the January 27th, 2015 council agenda.
I'm sorry, I dozed off. What did you say?
I'm afraid this is going to end up on Jimmy Fallon, I'm afraid.
You're a different breed of cat, you know that?
So, this is a proposed ordinance to make some changes to our, guess what, animal control ordinances. And the staff has recommended approval, but also acknowledges that there may be some interest in adjusting the number of animals that are permitted to be kept in the city.
I have two citizens from the audience that had indicated they wanted to speak on that. Do you still want to do that? If you'd like to speak on this issue, please come forward. And if you would, state your name and your address for the record. Thank you.
My name is Lisa Thompson, 10400 Northeast 4th Street. And so I guess it's still up in the air about raising the amount of animals. I just wanted to speak about being in favor of increasing the limit. I know people who have multiple animals who take great care of their animals, and I've also witnessed people who have one animal who should not have any animals, you know. And I think it could possibly benefit the animals at the shelter. Maybe it could increase adoptions, because I see people on Facebook say things like, oh, I'm at the limit, you know, I wish I could have that cute little guy or whatever. So I think that's a plus. And I also think that sometimes the amount of pets can be used against people. If a neighbor doesn't like another neighbor, even if the neighbor takes great care of their pets, you know, someone, if they don't like them, they could say, well, they have 4 animals, you know, just to mess with them. So, but I hope that you guys increase the limit. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Very much.
I'm,
So sorry, it was in my hand. Like, this is surrounding towns, and the number that they have, that they allow. Do you all want
Okay.
it?
Sure.
There's just 7 here, so 2 of you have to skip them.
Thank you.
I'm Rella Johnson, and I live at 428 Monroney Drive.
Okay.
And evidently, I didn't know we had all these ordinances. I had not a clue. I've been here over 40 years. Always had pets, but never knew we had all this stuff about them. What is the licensing okay, vaccinations, I know. Licensing,
I'm going to
That
let
would-
the
that would be
animal
the man.
control manager come up and respond, okay?
Yeah.
Generally speaking, you know, the licensing.
Go ahead and try to
Microphone.
speak into the microphone,
I'll-
Adrian.
Pull it pretty close, Adrian, so we can hear you.
Generally speaking, the licensing thing, I believe has been in effect since the early 1990s.
That's true.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's true.
Clearly, a lot of people want to view that as a revenue for the city. We don't view that, because if you look at the prices, it's clearly not. What our idea is, you know, when an animal has its license on, we pick it up, it's running straight, we know who to return it to. I will say we are at fault, and I'll even say that it goes long before my tenure. You know, it's not been enforced. And the reason we bring that up now is because we would like to start enforcing that, because we want to help ourselves, we want to help the citizens, we want to get their animals back to them. We want to lower our euthanasia rate at the shelter, and this is a way of doing that. It doesn't surprise me that we have a citizen here that's not aware of it, because it's just not something we have enforced, and that is a lack on our department that we are looking to change. That's why that's brought forth, where we will do a zero tolerance on it after a specific date. I don't want to go into the details because I've not got that. I've not even took that through my chain of command. We do have it in place that we can enforce it, but we don't want to blindside our citizens and be completely just all out rude about it. So we do want to give proper notifications. I'm going to start seeking some grant funds, basically, to get the citizens notified of what we're doing, why we're doing it, the positives of it. It is not a fundraiser. So we just, that's the idea, is a license tag would go back to that animal or to the owner to, give us the information of who owns that animal. So does that answer your question?
And you have the capabilities to check for chips.
Correct.
Do you try to contact those owners, or do you leave it up to the people that's lost their dogs to contact you?
Ooh, okay, I'm not sure.
Okay, if my dog got loose, which it never has, but it's chipped, and you picked it up.
We would check it for a chip and contact
Well,
you
you would
if your
contact-
information is up to date with the chip company.
That's what I'm asking.
And that's
You do check
huge problem.
and try to get a hold
right. And a
of the
microchip
owner.
would not trump a city license.
Okay.
So
How do we, when you have to get rid of an animal, what's our procedure? But I'm curious, I've had people ask me, I don't know.
well, I mean that doesn't necessarily fit into what we're
Well,
doing here
okay,
tonight.
that's fine,
I mean,
fine, but I wanted to ask the question.
If you'd like to
but thank
contact
you.
me during the week,
I will.
I'd be happy to address
I
that
will,
with you.
because I've had people,
They're all procedures that are certified, and all of our animal control officers are certified through the state, and they all are certified procedures.
how many
But
do we have? How many do we have?
We have four animal control officers and myself, the supervisor.
That's all?
Yes, ma'am.
We need more. Thank you, that's all I have.
I don't think he'll mind if you
Thank you,
give him
ma'am.
more help, will you, Adrian?
We will take any
Oh,
help.
I bet
we
you
can
would,
get.
wouldn't you?
And, I feel like as a department, we do a great job of what we've got.
Mr.
I guess
Sanders,
you do.
I've got one question for you.
Yes, sir.
One of the things about increasing or decreasing the number of dogs, cats you could have is a noise factor and a health issue and stuff. But we have ordinances in place if you have one dog or 4 or 5 dogs.
Mhm.
If there is a noise factor, then we can deal with that, correct?
Absolutely. I could just about anything that someone wanted to bring up as far as, well, what about this, what about that, if we do pass it for a larger number of animals, I could quote you a separate ordinance that would cover that. One of the biggest things that was brought to me was, what are we going to do about hoarding? I mean, hoarding is an animal cruelty concern anyways. I would probably, if I were to go out and bust a hoarding case right now, I would not write the number of animal tickets because it just wouldn't be feasible,
And that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you,
And
sir.
so what is the animal amount per household? What is it now?
It is currently at 3. That
3?
includes dogs, cats, or anything. I believe pretty much it's just not, you can't
Just-
have a poisonous animal or anything exotic. But
Just any combination, 3?
yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Mhm. Which, depending on how you want to look at that, may sound high, may sound low. We always joke, that we could go in there and count the number of fish in your aquarium, because the city ordinance doesn't stipulate that. We would never do that. But we're trying to bring some more structure so people do understand what they are allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do.
And as the ordinance is written, it would increase it to 5. Is that correct?
Sir. Yes, sir. And I would like to ask that if you do not see that as a feasible amount, at least consider 4 to put us in line with the handout that Ms. Thompson handed out. If you look, a lot of our other municipalities in the area do allow for 4. So at least consider that.
You're saying maybe 4 any combination?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I know there are some variances. I think Oklahoma City has a variance on where they don't count cats. I by all means don't think we need to go that far with it.
Her deal says 4 dogs, 4 cats, 8 total.
Okay, I was told a little different on that, but don't quote me for certain on that, so.
It's too many.
Okay.
The part that bothers me is the biggest complaint you've said is the noise complaints of barking animals, and if you increase it, it's just going to seem to make that worse. Plus, the number of dilapidated fences that are in our city. I don't think the citizens, many of them, are doing a very good job keeping the few animals that they are allowed to have contained, and I think it's a dangerous. We're asking for more dangerous situations.
I do tend to agree with you there, Councilman Moore. You know, there is an issue with, you know, like I say, there are people out there who have one animal that may not have any business according to city ordinance. A lot of things we look at, and I'm not really trying to justify it this way, there are people out there breaking that law already. We wanted, our intent was to get rid of what we're calling a tattletale type thing, and maybe that wasn't the right way to go about this. You know, even all these discussions we have all had with the council, it's brought a lot more consideration to me about how we should have, achieved this. So,
How are we handling if a neighbor complains that there's a dilapidated fence and dogs are getting out now? I mean,
right now, we would go and warn the person, let them know. If we get there and actually witness the dog out, because it is a misdemeanor crime, it must be performed in the presence of an officer. Given the situation, we try not to be too hard on the citizens. We want to give them a chance to fix their problems, and we'll talk to them and say, hey, keep your dogs put up, fix your fence, do what you need to do. Obviously, we cannot force someone to rebuild a structure, but I can write them a ticket for it if they're not going to comply. And usually after one warning, and we get your dog again, we have to write a citation. It's really a part of the job that we don't want to do. We don't want to upset our citizens. These are the people who support us, who come adopt animals from us. But there comes a point where if you're not going to comply, then we have to do something. But that's generally how it's handled. If we get there and don't witness the dog running loose, we give that complainant an opportunity to file a citizen's complaint.
What if you're witnessing, though, a dilapidated fence?
That would be, that's not animal control issue, so, I can't force them to rebuild their fence.
If they have a hole in their fence and the dog's walking through it?
Yeah, that would be code enforcement.
Code enforcement. Yeah.
Right, and I think it goes back to, the same thing. I don't want to run and tattletale on everybody when that happens. I want to go to that person and say, hey, look, there's a problem with your dog getting out. We see the problem, you probably know the problem and just haven't addressed it. Let's take care of it. Don't make us go further with it, But I do understand what you're saying with that, because it is a legit problem.
All right, thanks.
Anything else?
I think you do an awesome job. I just want to tell you that.
Thank you, sir.
I think there's a lot of stuff in here that I just haven't got my head wrapped all the way around yet, so I don't think I can go forward as it is. I really want you to be successful. I know that we talked on the phone this week about the permits, and we already have them. We're supposed to be getting the licenses, and we don't have capability of like doing it online or doing it over the phone. And I think those are some things that we can do right now that would be helpful for you.
Correct.
So I really hope we can get that. I don't know if that's something we've looked at, but if you do want to comply and get the license, you can't call in and get it over the phone because they just don't have the technology to do that, and you also can't go online. So I think if we did that, that would give him an opportunity to have more compliance with our existing ordinances.
Yes, sir. And that's
instead
one
of having
reason
to maybe tweak anything just yet.
Correct. That's one reason we don't really want to go just full force into this, because we have acknowledged the fact, it's 2015. I don't even like paying a bill unless I can do it online.
Yeah.
So, I sympathize with the public on this.
So I hope we can get that going for you. I think that'd be really
Right.
great. Just want to let you know, I think you're doing
Thank
a good
you,
job.
sir. I appreciate that.
Okay. I'd like to move to pass this ordinance with an amendment to raise it from 3 to 4 animals.
I second motion.
There you go. There's a motion.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve this ordinance as presented, with the exception that we raise the maximum number of animals that they can have to 4. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's a motion and a second.
We have a motion and a second. We'd have to vote that down, Councilman Moore, and then reinitiate that if we'd like to.
Do we want to, just as a question, do we want to discuss the other articles? I mean, the tethering, the dogs in heat? Is that impacting anybody else's mind, or we're all good on that? I was just curious.
Yeah, I think everything else
Everything else fine.
kind of.
As I mentioned earlier,
okay.
a lot of that stuff is enforcement issues that helps us do our job better on a daily scope.
Just curious. Ready? I'll vote.
Okay, have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, let's do a roll call. Ward one?
Nay.
Ward two?
Aye.
And so the motion carries 3-2, correct?
We'll have,
Mayor votes aye. So we're, the rules, it's 4 now. Thank you very much, Adrian.
thanks,
Thank you,
Adrian.
Mayor and Council, we appreciate it.
Adrian, I just want to tell you, Adrian,
Yes, sir.
you're doing a wonderful job.
You're the
Thank
man.
you.
I went
much,
over,
I
went
appreciate
over the other day just to visit our animal shelter. Adrian, besides doing a good job, he likes animals. I mean,
Yes,
he does a wonderful job. Thank
so
you
much.
for what you do.
man.
No.
Total.
No, combination.
Four total, yes, ma'am.
Right.
It's just one increase from the 3 total. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Item D5.
Discussion, consideration of approving and passing an ordinance amending Chapter 30, Parks and Recreation of the Midwest City Code, Article 4 in general by amending Section 30-46A, golf course rates, establishing an effective date and providing for repealer and severability. This ordinance will provide for the establishment of a new $5 9-hole foot golf rate at Hidden Creek Family Golf Course. This is a new thing that we're trying to bring forward, and hopefully will improve revenue and the golfing opportunities at Hidden Creek. Staff recommends approval.
Move to approve.
Have a motion and a second to approve. Item D5, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item E, new business, public discussion. New business or public discussion for the city council.
Adjourn. Move to
Item,
adjourn.
we got executive session.
Yeah, we got an executive session.
Move to
No,
go
executive session? Okay. Do we need to read that, guy?
Yes, I'll read it. Discussion consideration of one entering into executive session as allowed under 25 OS Section 307B4 to discuss Jason Martin versus City of Midwest City, case number WC 2019-15140X, and in open session authorizing the city manager to take action as appropriate based upon the discussion in executive session.
Move to go to executive session.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to go to executive session. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? We'll be back.